All right. So we have all had quite a week, and we are here Friday morning after the Met Gala, and let's just talk about it. Let's debrief.
Hi everyone, Natalie Trevonne here, fashion accessibility inclusionist. But also, you might find me at a stadium this year for World Cup as the accessibility coordinator. I love everything fashion, but I say that I'm a versatile girly. So sometimes you'll find me in sports and sometimes you'll find me in the fashion world. But one thing that doesn't change about my work is accessibility and championing accessibility and disability inclusion.
My name is Sarah Wasilak. I am the shopping director at Pop Sugar, and I am the host of Dinner for Shoes, which is a podcast about style and identity. I am in Hoboken, New Jersey. My week has been very crazy. Covering the Met Gala on Monday, it was a lot of fun because I love fashion and my background is in fashion. So I definitely it's tiring, but it is good work. We at Pop Sugar are also kind of taking on more of a social first coverage approach. So we are doing far less on the.com, but it gives me the opportunity to reach out to journalists and stylists and people who worked on different celebrities' looks on the red carpet and ask them questions and then report to our followers, which is like really dynamic and cool.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn, founder of Scribely. I'm in NorCal at the moment, but I'm actually heading to LA this weekend. Can't believe I'm hopping on a plane later. But yeah, it's been just a really big, really fun week. We did this awesome Met Gala watch party on Monday. So I'm so excited to kind of dig into that with the two of you and just go from there and talk about how we can make fashion more accessible. But first, Sarah, I'd love for you to give us just a quick rundown on Met Gala coverage in general.
So I think that the coverage actually starts a couple of weeks before, if you think about it. We, as fashion writers, get a lot of pitches in our inboxes beforehand, a lot of stylists, a lot of makeup artists that know they're going to be working with certain celebrities hitting the red carpet. This mostly is for beauty. Most of the time it's like makeup coverage, but they will give you some like sneak peeks or so-and-so celebrity is going to be wearing this. So it gives us the opportunity to kind of like set the stage and know who we really want to dive into covering, and maybe like think about some different approaches. I personally have been with Pop Sugar covering the Met in different ways since 2014. So it's been a really long time. And when I first started, we were doing what a lot of fashion sites do and creating an entire red carpet roundup of quote unquote the best dressed stars at the Met Gala. Those galleries got updated pretty much every second in real time. Once the celebrities started hitting the red carpet, we made sure that all of our captions were up to date. We wanted to credit every single designer, sometimes stylists, to shoes, accessories, all of that, even makeup in these galleries. And we had a beauty team kind of doing the same thing. At the same time, we had a team that was kind of breaking out specific celebrities that we knew our readers really, really were interested in. So we had multiple posts going up in one night. The difference now is that Pop Sugar is a lot more social focused. I personally was working on some Instagram static posts the night of the Met, as well as reaching out to stylists that I was getting releases from and trying to have conversations and asking questions about the looks and kind of like Easter eggs that they could share with me that I then put into a social video. The new series we have called the debrief, where it's kind of like a floating head overlaid on top of pictures of the celebrity on the red carpet or even behind the scenes photos that we could source from their team, breaking down the look and kind of letting our followers know, here's what you might have missed. So it's a new approach, but it's very fun. However, it's very fast moving. I will definitely say that it's a very late night. And the next day, there is just as much coverage. As a fashion writer, I probably am just as, I don't want to say stressed because I love fashion and I love diving into this type of thing, but I'm just as hyper focused and have no room to do anything else the day after as I am the night of. So it's not just a one night thing.
I'm really curious about these social first videos and that you're creating and how they kind of get a reaction online. And then I want to ask Natalie, like, do these videos sound familiar when you're scrolling TikTok the next day? And kind of what is your reaction to this type of content that's being put out so intensely on social media?
Yeah, I can just kind of like give a little debrief of our series called The Debrief. Basically, I am doing a lot of outreach to the stylist, the makeup artist, even like if I can't talk to the designer night of. For example, Janelle Monáe was someone who I really wanted to do a video on. I love Christian Siriano, and he designed her look. Christian Siriano is such an inclusive designer as well. Like, I was really excited to see him represented at the Met. So I knew I wanted to go out to that team. However, in real time, you don't always get a response from that celebrity stylist. They're busy. The stylist is probably still at the hotel in New York, maybe partying, you don't know. So you try to get responses, asking questions about what went into building that look, how long it took, if there's any sort of hidden meaning behind some of the details in the outfit. And then I'm describing it in this video verbally, which I feel like is a fun new approach. I do the best I can, like writing up my descriptions beforehand. But then for anyone scrolling, either they can read the caption if they can't watch the video on loud, or they can listen and, you know, try to imagine it. So I do feel like it is a exciting way to cover the Met Gala in addition to what people are doing on the .com. But I'm very curious to hear, Natalie, if you watch videos like this and how you take them in.
Well, first of all, Sarah's a beast at it. She's being modest. Sarah's probably one of the few fashion experts that actually include alternative text in their posts and is really good about trying to describe and break down looks. So I really appreciate that about you. When I see a lot of these videos, I'm not getting the same type of description. And I think that was the whole point of us putting this accessible Met Gala project together, right, Carolyn? Because people with visual disabilities were missing out on so much information. And yeah, people will break down whether they liked it or not, or they'll maybe describe one or two things about the outfit, but they're not really giving the full picture. And so it's really hard, I think, to follow some of those videos because I'm just not like, I guess as a fashion lover, I just want a lot more. And I guess it depends on the person, right? If it's someone that doesn't really care that much and they just want the gossip, they want the tea, and they're like, okay. But if it's someone that really enjoys fashion, I think there's a missed opportunity sometimes because it's not as descriptive as I'd want it to be.
Yeah, and when I heard you explaining that, Sarah, I thought about how when we describe images and describe visuals and video and all of that, the context is so, so important. You have to know the story, you have to know about the designer. And so you need that fashion expertise kind of infused into your descriptions and actually allowing you to focus on what is most important, what is most interesting, because that's ultimately what people want to know. So when you go through this act of trying to create really great visual descriptions, then it does just end up benefiting people who are just curious about these designs and want to know more.
That's so true. You're absolutely right about that. I am curious, like, what more these videos could do, or maybe in the caption, if there's a way to be even more descriptive that I could bring back to my team, because that's something that I like to think about a lot. Like, I do feel like obviously it's nice to have this option of listening and, you know, I'm kind of in motion describing what's behind me, the picture that you would be seeing on a .com article, but I am using my words. So I would love to know, like, what else we can add to that video that would make it even more inclusive and easy to digest for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Like, and I do think that you do this, and Carolyn, you definitely do this with your team, but it's like always we always want to think about color and texture and shape, and using metaphors, right? Something
Mm.
that Belle talked about when she was describing an outfit to us the other day was that she's like, it feels like a wet look, right? It almost feels like when you throw a pebble in a pond and it makes those ripples. And I was like, oh, I totally see that. Like, I can totally imagine that. Like, that's a really great description. And it gave
Yes.
me a picture in my head of what something looks like. So I think using that type of method to really describe things is always helpful when people can kind of paint the picture in their head.
That's so true. I think that that's actually a great tip. Like when I'm building my script for creating these videos in the future, to kind of look away, listen to what I have that I'm about to say, and see if I can visualize it. Because you're right, like using metaphors like that is so descriptive. And I think that especially for a Met where the theme is actually based on art, it's kind of easy because everything's really creative and it looks less like your typical dress than it does an actual painting or something like in the real world. Like everyone was really going crazy and kind of like transforming themselves. Like you look at someone like Heidi Klum, she loves Halloween costumes, so this was probably a fun theme for her, but like they didn't want to come as themselves wearing a dress. They wanted to really transform themselves into art. So the celebrities that got it right, they definitely are fun to describe.
Yeah, so I want to kind of shift the conversation into a huge topic of the evening, and that was disability representation. So we had some amazing moments truly that happened on the red carpet, and we absolutely must talk about them. So Natalie, that's your cue. How did you feel about representation on Met Gala night?
Yeah, I was like so excited because I've been talking about disability representation in media and entertainment for about 10 years now. Because when I was growing up as a young girl, for one, before I even lost my eyesight, I didn't see a lot of petite, dark skinned girls with coils, coiled hair in fashion or really in entertainment, right? So there was a certain look that you had to have. And then once I was disabled, I really did not see myself represented. And so I think when you are represented, there's this feeling of belonging, right? And so I really was excited for those who saw themselves on the red carpet on Monday, because I think that's so important. And it also opens up opportunity, right? When I was younger, I never thought that I would be even here talking with you all about fashion, right? Or that I would grow up one day to walk runways or to create my own fashion line. Like those are not the narratives that we are given when we become disabled. We're given very different narratives based on societal beliefs, right? And so I think to see those people on the red carpet is to see a whole new potential of what could be possible and what somebody with a disability can do and where they can go. And so I thought that was really, really impactful. And I really hope that this is the start of something new and that the amount of people with disabilities that Met is just increased year after year.
Yeah, it was so cool to wake up the next day and see my news feed just covered with representation and people excited about Sinead Burke, Lauren Wasser, Ariana Rose Phillip on the red carpet and just creating these reaction videos that were like, wow, I can't believe this, blew me away. It was very, very cool and a night to celebrate for sure. And just to find out that Vogue was working with Sinead Burke's company, Tilting the Lens, for many, many months planning for this. In fact, it was more than a year, it sounds like, I think she said. And it's just how much work went into this moment and how much anticipation. It was just really exciting. But Sarah, from your perspective, how was the coverage around that part of the Met Gala?
I think the coverage was great. I think this was definitely like turning a new leaf, and I hope it continues. I really do. I hope that it's not something that we only see once or twice. I tend to feel, and I hate to be pessimistic, but I tend to feel like the fashion industry starts to go in the right direction. And then maybe the next year or the next season, I don't see quite as much representation. And that's speaking to fashion weeks, it's speaking to award season. So it's something that I want to continue to see as well. I love that all three of these celebrities were represented in like Vogue's gallery. I think from a fashion editor perspective and someone who also hears a lot about designers and does a lot of research on designers and kind of like understands the history of these designers, it's also really nice to see that designers like Siriano and Prabal Gurung were the ones that were behind their looks. I feel like, you know, you see people who are on the red carpet wearing those brands all of the time, and just seeing it represented is like really, it makes me feel happy and willing to show up to like do the reporting that I'm doing in a different way than if the red carpet was not inclusive and was not diverse. So I think it kind of like fuels me in the midst of being a little bit overwhelmed that everything's moving really fast. People are arriving very quickly. You know, it's a nice moment of appreciation.
Inclusion, representation is definitely one side of it, but accessibility is something else. So I kind of want to steer our conversation into talking about accessibility in the physical and the digital sense. Natalie, could you kind of explain how that comes into Met Gala night being this in-person event that is also heavily broadcasted online?
I think when we talk about accessibility for Met Gala, right, a lot of the conversation is steered towards physical accessibility, making the red carpet accessible, making getting inside the Met Gala accessible, right? Which is very important. But I think there's a wider audience that are watching from home, right? They're watching the live broadcast, and there's a lot of disabled people interested in fashion, but they're not able to enjoy it from home in the same way that their non-disabled peers are, right? So there's no audio description, the interviews on the red carpet don't have interpreters. There's no captioning on the live broadcast. And so people don't, they're not enjoying it in a way that they really could be. And I think what was so cool about what you did with Scribely, Carolyn, and the Accessible Watch Party is that you provided those audio descriptions, you provided captioning, you provided sign language interpreting. And so it really made the experience enjoyable for everyone. And you could just feel the excitement and people's gratitude towards what you all accomplished. I know it was a lot of work, but I have been talking about audio descriptions for the Met Gala for about 5 years now. And I really enjoy watching it, but it's really hard because I don't know what's going on. I can't really react because I'm not sure what people are wearing. And the interviewers are very vague. It's mostly about, hey girl, how you doing? But it's not really about the look. So it makes it a little bit difficult to follow. And so I would like to see more of that. Representation is great. And I think we keep moving towards that. But I'd also like to see some accessibility efforts being made on the digital side.
I think this is a great example of where accessibility and fashion totally collide in one night and actually support one another. So at this watch party, we had a writer's room behind the scene. Scribely writers who were ready to describe every look that was coming across the red carpet and apply what they know about visual description to their work. But they were also supported by a fashion expert who was providing them with that context about the designers or anything that was being called out as really kind of unique about this particular look, because our writers need to know what they need to focus on, right? So it was, I definitely saw it as like this moment where we often like kind of operate in different spheres, but on this night, we all need to visually describe what we're looking for, and we need to do that efficiently. So I think that this accessible watch party was such an interesting experience. It was definitely a grassroots effort where we thought, you know, we've got to finally do this. We got to pull together a team and we've got to show how this is done and how it can be possible with just a little bit of organization, right? So this was definitely a start, and it was an invitation in of itself to keep going, to do this again, to put more, funding behind this sort of thing, to pull experts into this situation, and to be doing that planning, like Sarah talked about, weeks in advance, right? So you can really show up and have this great live coverage, so people don't have to wait the next day to hear about the outfits.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I definitely think that that's something that should be continued. And I'm so happy that that all went down. I'm actually also very curious, like, since as someone who is a fashion editor that is checking, for example, Getty for images to come in to like update my posts, or, that was kind of in the past, but to decide like who I'm going to go ahead and like do a debrief on. How did you decide? Like, I'm sure not every single look was described. How do you decide what looks you're going to pinpoint for like right in the moment? And then how do you decide which ones you might go ahead and describe the next day? And what did that kind of look like? How do you hope that that changes in the future, like maybe working with more fashion editors who can provide that real-time description? And yeah, like I'm just curious how I could help, because I feel like it's so important and it's very exciting. And I feel like also should be shared with a publication like Vogue that is doing this. They should know that this is happening, and they should potentially add that in to the live stream if they can in any way.
Well, we did have a priority level, high, medium, low, but that felt very arbitrary, right? It was like, how do we decide? So I really think that live coverage like this could get even better if we had more collaboration, and of course, more experts that kind of had a clue about what was coming down the red carpet. That would really improve things, because then, just kind of shifting around, what is the priority? What should writers be focused on right now? That would help definitely, get the descriptions out a little bit faster than the way that we were doing it, because we really were reacting to what we were seeing and thinking on our feet and doing our best. But the more collaboration, I know that everyone wants it to be a surprise, but what can we do in advance to actually make that easier to provide an accessible experience? I think that would be really cool to talk about with either a media company or Vogue itself. How can we make that happen?
If you haven't yet, I would say definitely go out to Vogue, go out to the Met, and see if you can get someone there in real time as part of their like red carpet coverage, because it's so important. And now there are so many ways technologically where someone could be standing there and reporting back to people at the watch party. And also in that way, they might be able to connect with the stylists, the designers who they know will be attending, and kind of start to plan ahead of time. Like, this look is going to be worthwhile. We want to really spend a lot of time describing this look. It's an important one, like you said, when someone like shows up on the red carpet and it is part of a theme, and you want to figure out how they're referencing the theme, research goes into that too. So all of this takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I also think about the flow of information. And I think you talked about this earlier, Sarah, where you need to pass not only images, but also information. And the way that's done is often using metadata. And this is getting a little like kind of nerdy, but I've also been involved with a standards organization that determines which information you can embed in image files and then pass to like a Getty, like you said. And that information is then imported, and it makes everything more efficient and make sure that it's correct, right? So you mentioned you had to nail those captions down. Everything needs to be right. And all that information goes along with the image as it passes to the next place that it goes. So alt text is part of that now. You can actually embed alt text in images and then pass them around the internet. It travels with the image. So I would highly encourage anyone who's involved with news. The IPTC standard is for news. Just knowing and having that awareness that you can actually pass alt text now, which is different than your caption. It's a visual description. It's not necessarily like the facts about the image. It's more visually describing what's there. So that's kind of a way that I think as an industry and thinking about this night that we could be even more efficient. So a big focus of the watch party was the audio description. And I definitely want to get into one of those because I think we can see this kind of from different angles, from the fashion expertise angle and also from the digital accessibility angle, and also the experience actually hearing what these descriptions are. So why don't we get into it? Why don't we get into a little description here? Let's describe Janelle Monáe. So over to you, Sarah, because I know you really dove deep into Janelle's look. So give us some context to start with.
Janelle Monáe's look is really incredible. It was designed by Christian Siriano, and I think my favorite part of it is that, well, first of all, Christian Siriano is an inclusive designer, and I feel like his designs don't always show up on the Met red carpet, and this was a great year for him. So I thought that that was great, first and foremost. Visually, this dress looks like moss and electrical cords wrapped around Janelle's body, but like perfectly framing her figure. There are cutouts on each side of her midriff that you kind of see a little bit of under boob on each side that I think is really unique because it adds this sexy factor to a look that's honestly pretty bulky because there are so many electrical cords. The green moss, I think, makes it feel a little bit more like in nature, if you will. And there were animatronic butterflies and I think one dragonfly kind of like interspersed in between all of these like gray braided electrical cords. And Janelle was almost moving. I mean, I'm assuming it was very hard for her to move in this because it looked like it was heavy, but she was almost moving in this robotic way. She was channeling her android alter ego, Cindy Mayweather. And I think that was another favorite part for me about this look is that she was referencing her own art, whereas so many other people on the red carpet were referencing historical, iconic artwork, which was great. And I love that because they kind of were like going towards what they knew and what they respected. But Janelle was making an important statement. She was making a statement about nature and how in a world of so much technological advancement, like we all come back to earth. We all still live on this earth. So she was kind of highlighting that within this outfit. It did have I would say a very long train based on how big and hefty it was for her to kind of like drag behind her. But I think something else that was really cool is that all of the cords kind of appeared to form like a big exaggerated turtleneck around her face. And the ends of these cords, they almost look like an Ethernet cord that you would like plug into the wall, were kind of like framing her face in a really beautiful, shapely way. And her makeup was obviously stunning. Her makeup was a little bit more simple. That was actually a trend that we noticed, that all the Pop Sugar editors noticed. A lot of these stars, while maybe their manicures were kind of like part of the look, their makeup was simple because their looks were so extravagant and they really wanted to like leave all of the focus on the clothing. But Janelle was wearing one of the animatronic butterflies that was moving in her hair. And so it just was like a really beautiful, whimsical top to this outfit. I also really loved her jewelry. She was wearing like chunky metal rings that almost felt like they fit in perfectly with all of that like electrical wiring. So it was really cool. I could look at it all day. I feel like this is the kind of look where like every time you visualize it or you see it, you notice something different, which I think is special.
That was so beautifully done, Sarah.
Thank you.
It really was.
Like seeing it in my head, I'm like, oh, that's amazing.
I know. I'm like taken aback. So you get points from an accessibility perspective, major points. Bravo. Yeah. I feel like hearing you describe that, it was so cool the way you like infused like the interesting aspects of it, the context with visual description. I just felt like those were really weaved together in a beautiful way. And when I think about like the accessible description and how we write those, it's so different. But the cool thing is they go together because the accessible description is written to almost like study quietly, like what this outfit looks like, and move through in kind of like a systematic way, so you can really see it kind of like coming into view even more. And you need both. You need this really, lively description that gives you the energy of what's happening in this look, and then also, to study it if you're curious from there and you really want to know. So some of the things that you were describing, we absolutely got to. And accessible descriptions are good because of the specifics. Like I'm looking at like a little excerpt from ours, and it's microchips, motherboards, and other computer parts are intertwined among the cords, including a rotary encoder and a round diffuser over the breasts. So we dive all the way into the details, but you only want to do that after hearing like a really engaging description like yours. So anyways, props, good job.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think more than anything else, it's kind of like this was like a really great lesson for me, because as I was describing it, I mean, it is hard because my team, and this is something that I completely understand, people are scrolling very quickly on their phones and watching social videos. If you're not watching like a long form video on YouTube where you are, like you said, very curious and you have the time to explore, people want to take it in quickly. So we try to create our videos 60 to 90 seconds, I would say, total. So it's hard to include all of this, but it made me realize that I could be including more of these descriptive words within that debrief. I'm really exploring in the debrief, like, oh, here's what you might not have seen in a picture. You might not have seen that these butterflies were actually moving, but Siriano made sure that they were moving, that, on her shoulder, you can see the wings fluttering when she turns this way. But I think it's important to continue to like highlight, oh, the cords were gray, they were braided, all of the descriptive things that you just explained about, like, those different computer parts, which I wouldn't even know what that was just by looking at it in a picture. But doing that research and adding that in, all it takes is like an extra word or two. So I'm really appreciative of this conversation so that I can take that mental note for next time I do one of these.
I think it's what you've been talking about this whole time, Carolyn. It's like a collaborative effort, right? It's having that fashion expert with the accessibility expert, right? It's kind of like how we were talking when I wrote that article, Sarah, and thanks to Sarah that it got published, about audio description describing fashion, specifically for shows that were talking about fashion and really fashion forward. And so one of the things that the audio describers were saying were like, well, our audio describers aren't fashion experts, but they could be working with the wardrobe department. If they were to send them the descriptions of like what they're doing, right? To kind of help them out. And then it's a collaborative effort, right? It's pairing the stylist on set or the wardrobe person on set with the audio describer to make sure that these outfits are really being described. And I think Descriptive Video Works has done such a good job as Emily in Paris has progressed from season to season. Like they now name the designer and the color and the shape. So I think it's about raising awareness to one, but accessibility is a collaborative effort. It can't be the responsibility of one or two people. Like it needs to be across the board. And maybe we need to take this on the road, Sarah. You, the fashion media accessibility.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, absolutely.
Well, we need to wrap this up. All three of us need a weekend. So I'm going to give the microphone back to you, Natalie. How do we finish this? What is the last thing you want to say about the Met Gala, or maybe looking ahead to the future?
I think what I would say to the fashion industry is that it's been done. So there's no longer the excuse of, I don't know how to do this or this isn't possible. We've seen Scribely and Carolyn, you need to applaud yourself. You've done it with limited resources. And so, how much more could the fashion industry do with they have more funding than we obviously do, to make these events more accessible and to make the experience enjoyable for everyone, because you're missing out on an audience when you don't, right? And so 25% of the world has a disability. So, this is a large group of people that you are not connecting with because you're choosing to not be accessible. And so I think this is like a call to action, right? Like there is no more excuses. Like we got to start moving forward and doing better, and looking towards how we become a more inclusive society, and creating spaces not only in person but online that are truly accessible.